Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of And Yet We Believe. I am Roger Pimentel. This is Ann Pimentel.
Hello.
And this is episode number 39. We have titled this episode Depictions of Jesus, the Good, the Bad, and
everything else.
The rest, I guess. Why don't you tell us what we're talking about today?
Yeah, so we want to talk about how Jesus is depicted in our media, kind of a broad Christian media, not necessarily just our church, but our church does fit within how broad Christianity is depicting Jesus. And I want to start by saying I am one of the founding members of the nonprofit Meeting House Mosaic that is focused on diversifying Christian art. The stuff that we share tonight is me speaking as me, just Ann Pimentel, not speaking as a board member of that organization. So
Perfect.
But I do have a lot of knowledge about this and a lot of passion. So let's dive in.
Perfect.
So I want to start by talking about how we've kind of ended up where we are right now with a white Jesus. Many people will say that Jesus looks like a Norwegian. I've heard a lot of surfer Jesus, model Jesus. We've kind of perfected, as white people, we perfected this certain style of long flowy hair Jesus.
It's a very specific look.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets repeated again and again.
Yeah. And, aside from Catholic icons, is that what they're called? The icons? Not a ton of religions depict Jesus. A lot of religions will not depict Jesus. They don't want to have any pictures. And that's a choice. But so this is how we got to where we are. So Jesus is a Palestinian Jew, right? He grew up in Israel, in that area. And I have some stats on what he would, or thoughts from researchers on what he would look like. Okay. So he was a first century Palestinian Jewish man. He most likely had brown or black curly short hair and beard, probably was about 5 feet 5 inches tall, and the characteristics of the bone structure of people in Jesus's time most closely match current day Iraqi Jews. Okay.
Interesting. So there's a couple of things that pop out there. Short, curly, maybe black hair.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
For me personally, the fact that he was maybe 5'5" jumps out.
Right.
So maybe I'm taller than Jesus was.
It's very possible. and most people at that time.
Sure.
There weren't a whole lot of really tall people back then. So that is what Jesus looked like, most likely, because that's what a typical man looked like. We know in the scriptures, there's not many descriptions of Jesus in the New Testament, and even to the point that in the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas had to go and kiss Jesus on the cheeks so that the soldiers would know who he was. If Jesus had been a tall, red-headed or blonde-haired, blue-eyed man, he would have been like, okay, he's going to be the blue-eyed guy when we show up. And it's the only one.
Going to be the white guy.
Yeah, right? So,
sort of a thing.
So he looked like everybody else.
Yeah.
And when you look at pictures from I think the earliest picture we have of Jesus that is, drawn on a cave somewhere in a grotto or something, it's from the 3rd century. And it does depict a man in a short tunic, with the short hair. He's carrying a sheep, I think, on his shoulders. So it looks very similar to what you would expect a first century Palestinian man to look like.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
So where it starts turning is in the 1500s. Catholicism is, wanting to take off with art. There's a lot of amazing artists in Italy in the 1500s. The problem is there's a lot of anti-Semitism as well. So a lot of hate toward Jewish people.
Okay.
And so the artists and probably the people that are commissioning these art pieces want to remove the Jewish look from Jesus and Mary. And so that's why you start seeing Jesus and Mary depicted as blonde, more European looking. They even go as far as not putting earrings on Mary very often in those early pictures because Jewish women wore earrings. That was a Jewish thing. And so Jesus and Mary start looking very blonde, very European, but all the rest of the people in the picture are different cultures. There's a very famous Italian piece where it has the wise men around Mary and Jesus, and there's like, one is Asian, one is very dark black, and one is a little lighter skinned. But Mary and Jesus are like blonde, glowing white skin.
And so, how do you respond to somebody who will point to that verse in the New Testament that describes Mary as fair?
Yeah, so fair did not refer to skin color at that point. It was more of a characteristic or a personality trait, something about her persona, her personality more than what she actually looked like.
Okay, because she was also a first century Palestinian woman,
right?
And would have looked like it,
right? So because of that, those anti-Semitic feelings in the 1500s that kind of spread out across the world, and then as a lot of the colonizing was happening, these white men would take a picture of Jesus as a white person, and they would use that picture to colonize other countries, and they'd say like, look, this is Jesus, he's our God, and look how much he looks like us. And it would reinforce this caste system of white is good and brown is bad. And so they used it as a colonizing tool. So that is really important to keep in mind as we go through this conversation, that white Jesus, depictions of Jesus as a white man, have been used to colonize and to oppress people in the history of our world. Again, this is not just in the U.S. This is going from Europe out to other countries and using this Jesus to make a hierarchy, to make a status symbol of whiteness. And so that's just something that's in our history, right?
Yeah.
If you want to go a little more into slavery in America, white Jesus again is used. There's people that are using the Bible to, cause issues and excuse away slavery as a necessary thing. So that's kind of how we get to America. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the 1940s and 50s that we're going to talk about. But what thoughts do you have about Jesus being depicted in the early centuries as a Jewish man, a Palestinian Jewish man, and then later being depicted and used as a white man?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that right now, so as a white American, I grew up seeing these pictures of Jesus and said, yeah, looks great. No issues. Yeah. No notes.
We felt seen, we could see ourselves there. And
absolutely. And so for some people and sometimes, and I know for me, at a certain point, it was jarring a little bit to see a different looking Jesus and go like, why are you changing Jesus from the, Swedish looking man to something else? And so there's kind of a logical leap you have to make and go, oh yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Right. And so I think it's important to call out right now, because you're kind of bringing this up.
Okay.
Right now in our time, having depictions of white Jesus is not bad. Okay. Having only depictions of white Jesus is harmful. Okay. So I use the phrase "Jesus had brown skin" all the time. I have it on a shirt. I have it on 2 shirts. I should have worn it today. Jesus had brown skin. That's something that I believe. And I think that is perfectly fine to say and to, convince people of. There were no white people in the Bible. Let's just throw that out there.
Yep.
But I am a firm believer that everybody should see themselves depicted in religious pictures, in sacred pictures, and be able to connect with divinity in that way.
Yeah.
I have been able to do that my whole life. Like you said, we walk into church, every picture of Jesus is white. All the apostles are white. Yep. Everybody, that is divine in some way is white.
Yep.
I've never had a problem feeling included in that way through art, through depictions, video, stuff in magazines, whatever it is. I've always felt like I'm included. It's very different for people of other cultures that show up to church and they don't see anyone that looks like them in the art at all.
Okay. So, and maybe that's the answer to the question I was going to ask you next, which is, when we talk about the Savior, we're talking about the things he taught, we're talking about his perfect example, we're talking about the atonement and the resurrection. So why does it matter what he looked like?
So that is a question that a lot of people will ask. And saying that it doesn't matter avoids all of the harm that it has caused to have it be just one way.
Oh, okay.
If it doesn't matter, then why would it matter? Like, why can't we have a Black Jesus? If race doesn't matter, why do people want Jesus to be portrayed as white?
Okay.
Right? Yep. I have this quote from Esther Hilani Kandari. She's an artist here in Utah. She says, if a child is walking through the church building and every single image of Christ and every single image of an angel and every single image of an apostle is Eurocentric, then what does this tell a young Black child or a young Asian child or a young Polynesian child about their racial identity and their proximity to goodness, righteousness, and to deity? Mm. So that's the problem. I know of a story from Maui Bonner, who's walking through church with his little son. They're looking at a picture of Jesus with all the angels around him, and his son says, hey, Grandpa's never going to make it to heaven. And he's like, what do you mean? Why would you say that? And he's like, well, look at all the angels. None of them look like Grandpa. He's never going to make it to heaven. And all the angels were white. And so that sends a message to children, especially to children. They learn through art. We all learn through art, but children really can, that sinks in. They are going to notice when they are not represented, and then they'll question, well, do I really belong here? Is this something that, am I valued? Do I have an opportunity to become divine? That's a big question for kids to ask.
Yeah, that's really meaningful. So tell me if I have this all right. So if we were trying to depict Jesus as historically accurate, as a first century man living in that part of the world, probably darker skin, dark, maybe black hair. That's what we'd be looking at. But also, there's value in cultural depictions of Jesus Christ, even an Asian Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Polynesian.
Right. An Asian Christ would be no more or less historically accurate than a white Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And some of my favorite pictures now are from cultures where you wouldn't expect to find pictures of Jesus. I love the Asian art of Jesus.
Cool. Yeah.
Whether it's Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Cambodian, I've seen it all. I love it all. One of my very favorite pictures is a Maori Jesus from New Zealand. He's got these like horns coming out of his cheeks or his neck or something. I can't remember. Not horns in like devil horns, but like traditional Maori man sort of tattoos on his face. Like it's so cool.
Love that.
Yeah. I have a quote from a professor, Anthea Butler. She says, maybe we need to let's give a little more history. So let's pull it up to the 1950s. Tell me what you know about the famous picture from Warner Salmon called The Head of Christ. Tell me what you know about that.
Okay, so this is, I'm actually going to position this in part of a little larger history here.
Okay.
And so I want to take one step to the left from talking about race and now talk about other ways that Jesus is depicted.
Okay.
Here we're talking 1800s on, so this is all white Jesus for one thing.
Yeah. There are a few pockets where you'll find Black Jesus, like there are really old pictures of Black Madonna in France and Spain and stuff in some cathedrals. So every once in a while it comes out, but overarching, always pretty much a white Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then there's a shift that happens from the 1800s to like the mid 1900s, like you're talking about. So in the 1800s and even well before that, you got what I would call a gentle Jesus. And so you had real soft features, like real porcelain skin, delicate cheekbones. And you would see it in like posture as well. So he'd be looking down. Yeah. It's very demure. Colors were often pastel or muted. And you're often seeing him with sheep or something like that. And to be totally honest, in these pictures, you get what we would call now feminine characteristics.
Yeah.
Physical characteristics.
Soft hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the
facial
beard,
features.
I guess.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of examples. I mean, you can really go look at kind of any Jesus art from that era. I had picked out Bernard Plockhorst, The Good Shepherd, as an example. Feel free to go Google that as an example, and you'll see the looking down and the very gentle look. But that did start to shift once you get into the kind of mid-century time here. So the Warner Solomon picture, like you're talking about, the head of Christ, it was 1940, I think. And you have seen this picture.
Yeah.
And I think it's less common even in LDS circles than it is in Protestant circles, where it was kind of the biggest deal ever. But it's this picture of Jesus, and it's just, the shoulders and up.
Yeah.
And he's kind of looking off and up into the distance. You already have a difference here where he's looking up, right? But you get a very different Jesus. He's got a stronger jaw. He's got a defined brow. He's got a strong nose, almost kind of Roman looking. This was the era of Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments, and it very much fits that mold. And some people might say, well, he was a carpenter. Of course he was strong and virile and that sort of thing. And maybe so. That argument makes sense to me. I don't know what he looked like.
Yeah.
But this was a Jesus that looked like a leader of men.
Yeah. Well, and Solomon really wanted it to be a very familiar looking type of picture. So this was a very common posture for business pictures and for school photos. Okay. And so kind of turned to the side and looking off in the distance, like you're saying. So it was a very common picture, the way it was framed and, the way his posture was, because they wanted it to be familiar and something that they could easily hold on to. It's like, yeah, that's my Jesus. That's the one that I know.
Yep.
And I'll add this little bit of interesting tidbit of information here. So this picture was printed on pencils, on bookmarks, travel-sized cards, even lamps and clocks. Wow. They wanted it to get out everywhere, and it was printed in over 2 million cards, or 2 billion. I can't remember now if it's million or billion. Oh, it was well over 500 million times.
Okay.
So it was printed everywhere, even to the extent that President Eisenhower endorsed a campaign called Christ in Every Purse. And millions of these cards were sent out all over the world because they wanted everyone to use this image. This was the image of Christ that was used in the world.
So this was for sure the most influential modern picture of Christ.
Yeah. For decades it was used.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And this comes at the time with Billy Graham and others, and they were talking about a manly Christianity, one that was robust and decision oriented, and that really was a departure from this very gentle Jesus that had been depicted in art, 50 and 100 years before that. After that, you have Phyllis Schlafly, you have some of these other real influential people that helped kind of drive that evangelical movement forward. Should we keep going in the history here?
Yeah, let me just give this one quote from Anthea Butler that I was mentioning earlier. She's talking about Solomon's Jesus. It was the Jesus you saw in all Black Baptist churches. That Solomon's Jesus did not look like Black Christians. Instead, Jesus looked, quote, like the people who were beating you up in the streets or setting dogs on you. So this is clearly in the civil rights era.
Right.
And she said that Jesus sent a message. If Jesus is white and God is white, then authority is white. So that's a hard message for people of color, especially living in the civil rights era.
For sure.
That,
yeah.
I mean, that's something that's close enough to us. It's only a generation away that we can relate to and kind of hold closely and look at.
Yeah.
That is a hard message.
It really is.
That Jesus doesn't look like the people in the church, but looks like the people that are stopping you from doing everything else outside.
Yeah, so if we go back to that question of why does it matter?
Yeah.
That's why. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me kind of finish out this kind of modern history of depictions of Jesus, because it kind of gets weird.
It does. It takes a weird turn.
It does. And so you start to look at, starting in the 1980s, especially, you had this concept of like biblical manhood and biblical womanhood. And biblical manhood was about headship, in both in the family and in the church, and it was about authority, and it was about discipline.
Yeah. No more like coming in with the lambs or, you
right.
know, it was wanting to show this like really fierce leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a really influential book in 2001 called Wild at Heart about Christian men and how about every man is a warrior, and women need to be protected. And it referenced Braveheart and Gladiator and James Bond and all of these things about this warrior mentality in Christian men. So we're talking about depictions of Jesus. And so I picked out kind of one to describe here. And again, if you're Googling these as we go,
good luck.
This one's a little bit wild. It comes from Stephen Sawyer. This is a pretty famous depiction of Jesus. And he's literally in a boxing ring, and he's shirtless and his long curly hair is flowing. And he's got a pair of boxing gloves. Yeah. And you can see the spear,
the wound in his
side.
Yeah.
And it says at the bottom, undefeated.
Gosh.
His arm is kind of facing the camera.
Does he have a tattoo on his arm, or is that a different one?
That's a different one. That's also Stephen Sawyer.
Okay.
But he's super muscular and
like freakishly muscular.
Not as much in that one, but more so in some others. But this is kind of the third era. We had that gentle Christ. We had the Warner Solomon in the middle, which I would call like a protector, maybe. And then we have the warrior Christ. And sometimes we see this as a joke, and I like it better as a joke, but you're seeing, a Jesus that's muscular and his veins are popping out and he's shirtless and he's intense. There's a ferocity to it.
Yeah, I've even seen one recently where he's holding a big, huge gun.
Oh, yeah.
And like he's gonna spray people down. Like, what is that? Why would Jesus ever hold a gun?
And that's the stuff that I hope is a joke. I don't know.
I don't think this was intended to be a joke.
I don't know if it is.
Yeah.
But we have seen this evolution. If you pull back and look at it objectively. As for sources on this, I really like Kristen Koves-Dumay's book, Jesus and John Wayne.
So good.
How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation, which is a pretty punchy title.
Yeah, it is. It's really good.
The other one that comes up in all these circles is Stephen Prothero, American Jesus, How the Son of God Became a National Icon. And I have not read that book, but it is on my list. Enough that I felt like I could mention it out to everybody.
Well, I'll say one too. Dr. Jamar Tisby has a book called The Color of Compromise that's about kind of the Black church and Black people in Christianity and how there's been some divisions there. And this topic of Jesus does come up, how Jesus is depicted.
Perfect.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say these warrior depictions of Jesus don't show up as much in our church, it seems like.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to have ever taken hold in like orthodoxy. There might be some fringe people that use it and like it, but
maybe in their homes or as their phone backgrounds or something. I don't know where that kind of stuff pops up. But where we do have it? Prophets, and not modern prophets. I'm talking about the paintings of Nephi and Moroni that Arnold Freeberg did. Yeah. Those guys were jacked.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we grew up with was really ripped Nephi and Moroni and all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and those pictures were in the Book of Mormon. They were official.
Aren't they?
I think so. Yeah. So when I was probably a teenager, I had a poster on my wall, and it said, "Stripling Warriors, Mama's Boys." Do you know the one?
I do.
Okay. If you don't know this poster, it's illustrated. It's not a photo. It's kind of artistic, illustrated style. And thinking back, I'm kind of weirded out by this because you don't see. There's three, I think, young men in the picture. You don't see their heads. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of cropped out of the picture, and you don't see below the waist. So it's these three dudes' muscular torsos. And they got the 6-pack abs, and they got the pecs and the biceps. And stripling warriors, mama's boys. And looking back, I'm
I've
like,
seen that on t-shirts and stuff. Yeah.
I'm like, what did that do to me?
Why did you have that there? Who hurt you?
So, as Latter-day Saints, culturally, we may not have fully adopted this macho Jesus, but we definitely have had macho prophets.
Yeah.
And it kind of feeds to the same vibe.
Yeah. Wow. It's so crazy to think like why we would want to hold on and put that up on a pedestal. Why do we want this macho, super muscular man men to be on a pedestal? When we look at the words of Jesus, he taught to turn the other cheek, to love your enemies, to, walk with them twain 2 miles of, all those things. He taught nonviolence.
Yeah.
It was peacemaking. It was love. It was not macho in the sense that we know it to be in America or Latin America or, it's totally different.
Well, and you look at, the role that Jesus played during his mortal ministry. Mm-hmm. He was not interested in politics. He was not interested in, they had been conquered by Rome.
Yeah.
They were subjects, and he largely, as far as we can tell, did not care.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we are very quick to use war imagery and warrior imagery and army imagery in the church, which he didn't do at all.
Yeah.
That's not at all what Jesus taught.
No, I think he taught and spoke about the exact opposite.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so I went to General Conference talks to see, like, hey, did I make this up? Did I imagine this? Or do we talk about this all the time? The answer is it gets talked about all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so I pulled a bunch of quotes. I don't need to read them necessarily. I went from Elder Rasband in 2018. You are a great part of the royal army of the priesthood. President Nelson, think of your duty as God's mighty army to help prepare the world for the second coming of the Lord. And it's not just young men either. We had Sister Div from 2010 speaking to women and young women. I feel as though I am standing before a mighty army of elect daughters of God. And we do this army thing over and over again.
Well, and this just showed up in our primary program. I can't remember what the song was, but it was talking about how we're all enlisted in the army, but it was talking about like a family putting up their banner or something, and it talked about being in an army. And we had a friend point it out to us, like, did you hear that warrior talk? And we hadn't. That's how normal this is.
It just slides right in.
We didn't even realize until it was pointed out.
Yeah. Great comment in the chat from Tom about Jesus isn't a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, or an American.
Right.
Yeah. And there was we talk about the role that Providence played in the U.S. founding, and that sort of thing. And that's great. And that very well may be true.
Yeah.
I can't really speak to that. But there was a really nice article a couple of years ago by our friend James Goldberg and some others in the Liahona magazine called Our Inspired Constitutions. And it talked about some other constitutions from other countries and foundings and the role that we believe God played in those countries as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important to, we always talk about the separation of church and state, and it feels like it is, those ties are being tightened around it to make it one and the same, with Christian nationalism and stuff that's happening right now. But we have to remember that the whole world is covered with God's children. Every country has God's children. And, I don't buy into the exceptionalism of America. Yep. I think we're a great country. I like our country. I love living here. We could leave and we're not. Like, we're choosing to stay.
Sure.
I don't think that we have to always just hold up this "we're better than you" neener neener, look at our warrior god.
Right. Yep.
I don't buy into that god.
Yep. So you've circled us back around, which is good. I kind of took us on a detour there, but it kind of explains this evolution, especially in evangelical Christianity, but that our church has followed very closely behind in. And you know, I would cite Ezra Taft Benson, who, you know, really pushed these complementarian ideas. Women should stay home, men should be the providers, these sorts of things in the 1980s, which were really big. I mentioned Phyllis Schlafly earlier. Yeah. These were big evangelical talking points that we kind of followed along in a little bit, and are cultural things and not doctrinal things.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like we're still trying to peel out from underneath some of that teaching.
Yep. So maybe a question to end. Which picture of Jesus is right?
All of them. Like I said earlier, and this actually comes from Jasmine Bradshaw. She does the podcast First Name Basis.
Okay.
And she has an episode about Jesus had brown skin, and she says the problem isn't depicting Jesus with white skin. We could add in as macho, or, you know, all these demure, whatever, like all the ways. It's not a problem of doing it. It's the problem is depicting Jesus with only white skin.
Right.
So it's, if you only hold up one depiction, not one picture, but one type of picture, then you are always going to run into problems. Mm-hmm. And I think when we're looking at a savior of the world, why not have pictures from around the world? Yep. Everybody needs to find themselves, see themselves in divinity, and connect with God in a very personal way. And art is such an easy way to do that. And,
you know, my question was a joke, obviously, of which one is right. But lacking a photograph, that gives us the freedom and the ability to see and use and appreciate all depictions of Jesus Christ. You know, if it really is meaningful to you to have him holding a big gun or something, that's not my style.
Yeah.
But maybe that's working for you. If that's helping you to love your neighbor, hey, go for it.
So I want to end with this. We're going to talk about something, and we're showing it on the video, but if you're listening in audio, Google this. So this is the new book, Expressions of Jesus.
This is not an ad.
Nope.
We're not like...
I mean, buy it, but we're not getting anything if you buy it. Yeah, we're not influencers. We just love things.
Yeah.
This is the Expressions of Jesus book. It was published by Shadow Mountain Publishing. It's available at Deseret Book and other places. But it is cultural representations of the Savior of the world. And there's over 100 pictures of Jesus from countries all over the world. And I just want to close with a quote from the introduction. This is by Robert Birch, who's a friend of ours as well. He's a director of the Sema Hadithi African American Heritage and Cultural Foundation. He says, representation isn't just a matter of aesthetics. It's about fostering self-esteem, a sense of belonging, and empowerment within our congregations. Congregations that embody and exude a rich mosaic of heritage and culture. When our religious narratives genuinely reflect this diversity and complexity within our sacred spaces, they send a resounding message that every story matters, every history is significant, and every presence is integral to our familial spiritual journey. I really appreciate this message that, again, it's not bad to have different depictions. It's not bad to have a white Jesus. It's just bad when we uphold one type. And everybody needs to know that their story matters, that their experience matters, and that they matter to God. And the best way to do that, I think, the easiest way to do that is through art.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's end it right there.
Let's do it. Okay.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. See you later.
See you next time.